The hum of the ship's engine was the only sound as Captain Jordan reclined in the cockpit, sipping lukewarm coffee from a metal mug. The vast expanse of stars outside the window seemed endless, a tapestry of light and shadow stretching infinitely in all directions. At their feet, Max, a sleek black Labrador with sharp eyes and an alert posture, dozed lightly, his ears twitching at the faintest sound. For months, it had been just the two of them, exploring the edges of known space. Max was more than a companion. He was Jordan's anchor in the isolation of the void. A sudden blip on the console shattered the quiet. Jordan leaned forward, nearly spilling the coffee. The signal was faint but unmistakable, an artificial transmission, pulsing with rhythmic precision. No known human or allied species occupied this sector. This was something new. Adrenaline spiked as Jordan quickly scanned the data. The origin was a lush, Earth-like planet visible through the viewport, shrouded in swirling blue and green clouds. The ship's AI chirped a warning about atmospheric turbulence, but Jordan silenced it with a wave. "Looks like we've got company, Max," Jordan said, scratching behind the dog's ear. Max responded with a low whine, sensing the shift in his human's mood. Minutes later, the ship's descent thrusters roared as it pierced the planet's atmosphere. The turbulence was rough, shaking the craft violently. Max barked once, a sharp, startled sound, but Jordan's calm voice soothed him. "We're fine, boy. Just a little bumpy ride." The ship landed in a clearing surrounded by towering, bioluminescent trees. Their glowing branches swayed in an unseen breeze, casting flickering shadows over the thick, mossy ground. Jordan powered down the engines and grabbed their equipment, including Max's harness. The dog was already at the hatch, tail wagging and ready to explore. As they stepped outside, the air hit Jordan like a wave, warm, rich, and slightly sweet, filled with the hum of unseen insects. Max sniffed eagerly, his nose to the ground, while Jordan scanned the surroundings with a handheld device. The atmosphere was breathable, and life signs were abundant, though none close enough to explain the signal. Max froze, his ears perking up, and let out a low growl. Jordan followed his gaze to the edge of the clearing. Something, or someone was watching them. A figure emerged cautiously from the shadows, stepping into the soft glow of the trees. She was humanoid, but only just. Her skin shimmered like polished sapphire, and her large, iridescent eyes reflected the bioluminescent light. She wore simple, flowing garments made from what looked like woven plant fibers. Her hands, delicate and graceful, had only 4 fingers each, and her head tilted slightly as if trying to understand the strange beings before her. Before Jordan could speak, the girl's gaze locked on Max. Her expression twisted into one of pure terror. She stumbled backward, pointing a trembling finger at him and uttering a series of sharp, musical syllables. Though Jordan couldn't understand her words, the meaning was clear. She thought Max was a monster. "It's okay," Jordan said, raising both hands in a gesture of peace. "He's not going to hurt you." The girl didn't seem reassured. Her wide eyes flicked between Jordan and Max, her body tense as if ready to flee. Max, oblivious to her fear, wagged his tail and let out a cheerful bark. The sound made the girl yelp and retreat further, her shimmering skin taking on a faint, pulsating glow. Jordan knelt beside Max, stroking his fur. "Easy, boy. Let's not scare her more than she already is." Then, reaching into a pouch, Jordan retrieved a small ration bar and held it out to the girl. The universal gesture of offering food seemed to transcend language barriers. The girl hesitated, her luminous eyes narrowing in suspicion, but curiosity won out. She stepped closer, her movements slow and deliberate. She snatched the ration bar from Jordan's hand and retreated a few paces, sniffing it cautiously before taking a small bite. Her expression softened slightly, though her gaze never left Max. Jordan seized the opportunity to try communication. Pointing to themselves, they said, "Jordan?" Then, gesturing to Max, "Max?" The girl watched, her head tilting again, before pointing at herself. "Tyla," she said, her voice like a melody. "Nice to meet you, Tyla," Jordan said with a small smile. They pointed at Max again, then mimed a petting motion, trying to convey that the dog was friendly. Tyla frowned, her brows knitting together as she considered the gesture. Max, ever the diplomat, took a step forward and sat down, his tail sweeping the ground in a slow wag. Tyla flinched but didn't retreat this time. Instead, she crouched low, her gaze locked on Max as if trying to decipher his intentions. "Good boy, Max," Jordan murmured, keeping their tone low and encouraging. Tyla reached out a tentative hand, her 4 fingers trembling as they hovered inches from Max's nose. The dog sniffed her fingers gently, then gave a quick, wet lick. Tyla jerked back with a startled laugh, the sound bright and unexpected. Jordan couldn't help but chuckle. "See? Not a monster. Just a big softy." Tyla didn't seem entirely convinced, but some of the fear had faded from her eyes. She began speaking rapidly in her melodic language, gesturing to Max and then the forest beyond. Though the words were incomprehensible, Jordan caught the sense of warning. Whatever Tyla feared, it wasn't just Max. "Something else out there, huh?" Jordan said, their gaze sweeping the darkened tree line. "Guess we'll find out soon enough." Tyla gestured again, this time more urgently. Jordan nodded, motioning for Max to follow as Tyla turned and led the way deeper into the forest. Whatever lay ahead, it was clear the girl had more to show them, and perhaps more to fear. As they disappeared into the glowing woods, Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was only the beginning of something far greater than a simple misunderstanding. Something about Tyla's urgency and the way she glanced nervously at Max hinted at dangers yet unseen. For now, though, Jordan focused on the task at hand, trusting Max to sense what they could not. The forest closed in around them, alive with sounds and light, as the alien girl and the human explorer began their fragile, tentative alliance. The path Tyla led them down grew narrower, the bioluminescent trees pressing close as though the forest itself were eavesdropping. The soft hum of alien life surrounded them, a mix of clicks, chirps, and distant rustling. Jordan kept a hand near their sidearm, though they doubted it would be much use if something truly dangerous emerged. Max trotted ahead, his nose low to the ground, pausing occasionally to glance back as if ensuring Jordan followed. Tyla stayed a few paces ahead, her movements quick and fluid, but her constant glances toward Max betrayed her lingering unease. Jordan studied her, noting the tension in her shoulders and the way her glowing skin dimmed slightly each time Max got too close. Her fear was palpable, yet so was her determination. Whatever she was leading them toward, it was important enough to push her past her terror. Jordan wanted to reassure her again, but new words would be useless. They would have to let actions speak louder. After what felt like hours, the forest opened into a clearing dominated by an enormous structure. It looked organic, like a massive shell that had grown from the ground itself. Its surface shimmered faintly in the light of the glowing trees, and intricate patterns swirled across it, like veins of molten metal frozen mid-flow. Tyla stopped abruptly and turned to face Jordan, her expression somber. She gestured toward the structure, then to Max, speaking quickly and urgently. Her tone carried a mix of fear and pleading. "I don't understand," Jordan said gently, shaking their head. "But I'll try to figure it out." Tyla groaned in frustration, then crouched low, dragging her fingers through the dirt to draw a crude picture. She sketched what looked like a tall, spindly creature with jagged features and clawed hands. Next to it, she drew Max, exaggerating his size and teeth until he looked monstrous. She pointed to the first figure, then to the structure, and finally to Max, shaking her head emphatically. Her meaning was clear. Whatever she feared lived inside that structure, and she thought Max was no better than the thing that haunted her. Jordan knelt beside her, brushing some dirt away to draw their own picture. They sketched Max as best they could, emphasizing his wagging tail and friendly posture. Then, next to it, they drew a small human figure with a heart between them. Finally, Jordan pointed to Max and then to themselves. "He's with me. He's not a monster." Tyla hesitated, her glowing eyes flickering between the drawing and Max, who sat a few feet away, panting happily. She didn't seem entirely convinced but sighed, standing and motioning for Jordan to follow her toward the structure. As they approached, Max let out a low growl, his hackles rising. Jordan froze, their pulse quickening as they scanned the area. Tyla spun around, her skin flaring brightly as she raised her hands, palms outward, in a gesture of warning. The air grew heavy, and an unsettling silence fell over the clearing, as though the forest itself were holding its breath. From the shadows of the structure, a figure emerged. It was tall, with a gaunt, almost skeletal frame, and its translucent skin revealed pulsating veins of bioluminescent light. Its eyes were hollow and unblinking, fixed directly on Jordan and Max. The creature moved with an eerie grace, each step sending a ripple through the ground as though it were part of the planet itself. Max barked, the sharp sound breaking the silence. The creature recoiled slightly, its gaze shifting to the dog. Tyla screamed, a high, melodic cry, and ran to place herself between the creature and Jordan. Her trembling hands pointed frantically back toward the forest, urging Jordan to flee. But Jordan held their ground, their hand instinctively moving to Max's harness. The creature let out a sound, a low, resonant hum that vibrated in Jordan's chest. It didn't advance but stood there, watching, as though calculating its next move. Jordan tightened their grip on Max's harness, whispering, "Stay close, buddy." Tyla, still gesturing wildly for them to leave, turned her gaze to Max and then back to the creature. For a moment, a strange clarity passed over her expression, as though she were seeing something for the first time. Slowly, she lowered her hands and turned to Jordan, speaking softly in her alien tongue. Though the words were incomprehensible, her tone carried a quiet insistence. She pointed at Max, then at the creature, and mimed something that resembled an attack. Jordan frowned, piecing together her intent. "You think Max can help? Against that thing?" They looked at the dog, whose body was tense but ready, his intelligent eyes locked on the creature. It wasn't the first time Max had faced danger by their side, but this felt different. Still, if Tyla believed Max could be the key to stopping this, they had no choice but to trust her. The creature stepped closer, its humming growing louder, almost painful. Tyla moved back toward Jordan and Max, her movements slow and deliberate, as if trying not to provoke the thing. She knelt beside Max and, with trembling fingers, touched his head briefly before gesturing toward the creature. Jordan realized she was trying to summon her courage. Max seemed to understand in a way that transcended words. He stood, his body relaxed but alert, and let out a low bark. The sound echoed across the clearing, and the creature paused, tilting its head as though trying to make sense of the sound. Max barked again, louder this time, and took a step forward. The tension broke. The creature let out a guttural screech and lunged, its movements lightning fast. Max darted to the side, evading the strike, and barked again, the sound sharp and commanding. The creature hesitated, its focus wavering between Max and the humans. Jordan seized the moment, grabbing a flare from their belt and igniting it. The bright light flared across the clearing, casting harsh shadows that seemed to disorient the creature further. Max lunged this time, not to attack, but to drive the creature back. His fierce barks echoed in the clearing, each one pushing the alien predator further toward the shadows of the structure. Tyla watched in awe, her fear replaced by something closer to wonder as the dog, the monster she had once feared, drove away the true terror of her world. Finally, with one last guttural cry, the creature retreated into the depths of the structure. The air grew lighter, the oppressive silence lifting as the ambient sounds of the forest returned. Max stood at the edge of the clearing, his chest heaving, but his posture triumphant. Tyla stepped forward, her glowing skin flickering softly. She dropped to one knee and placed her hand gently on Max's head, her voice soft and melodic as she murmured something Jordan couldn't understand. But they didn't need a translation. The gratitude in her tone was clear. Jordan knelt beside them, scratching Max behind the ears. "Good boy, Max, looks like you're not a monster after all." Tyla smiled faintly, her iridescent eyes meeting Jordan's. Though no words were exchanged, the understanding between them was undeniable. The divide between their worlds had narrowed, if only slightly, and the seeds of trust had been sown. Tyla's grip tightened on Jordan's sleeve as they walked deeper into the alien settlement. The structures around them were strange, both beautiful and menacing. Smooth, gleaming surfaces reflected the dim light of the twin moons, casting long, eerie shadows across the ground. The air buzzed with energy, but there was an undertone of danger that Jordan could feel creeping along their skin. Max trotted beside them, his body tense, ears swiveling as he tracked every sound in the unfamiliar environment. He had proven himself to be brave, but this was different. Even the dog's senses picked up the tension in the air, the unspoken threat that lingered just beyond their perception. Tyla's steps quickened, and Jordan followed suit, sensing the urgency in her movements. Her glowing skin, once calm and vibrant, now shimmered with a frantic intensity. Her eyes flicked over her shoulder, scanning the darkening landscape as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. Jordan wanted to ask her what was wrong, but every time they opened their mouth, she cut them off with a quick gesture, urging them forward. They arrived at a clearing where a cluster of figures stood waiting. There was a palpable chill in the air as Tyla stepped forward to join them. Her posture was tense, but there was a clarity to her movements now, as though she had accepted what was about to unfold. Jordan slowed to a stop behind her, a sense of foreboding creeping up their spine. Max growled low, a warning that didn't go unnoticed by the others. The figures were tall and angular, their skin darker than Tyla's and more muted. They wore elaborate armors adorned with symbols that Jordan didn't understand, but felt the weight of. They were the same species as Tyla, but their energy was different, more rigid, more controlled, like they were constantly watching, assessing. The leader, a tall figure with a crown-like structure on their head, stepped forward. Tyla, the leader's voice was a melodic blend of authority and restraint. It was clear that they recognized her, but there was no warmth in their greeting. "You bring a human here?" Tyla's response was quick, the words flowing from her lips in a rapid, urgent sequence. Her hands moved in precise gestures, indicating something, though Jordan couldn't follow. The leader's eyes darted briefly toward Jordan, then back to Tyla. "You risk everything by bringing them here," the leader continued, their voice cold. "Our kind has no place for them." Tyla's shoulders sagged slightly, but her voice remained firm. She didn't back down. Instead, she reached for Jordan's hand, pulling them into the conversation. "They saved me," she said, her words strong but filled with the weight of past pain. "Without them, I wouldn't be standing here." The leader's gaze hardened, and for a moment, the silence between them was thick enough to cut through. Jordan held their breath, feeling the heat of the moment in their chest. Max, sensing the tension, stayed close, his body low to the ground as he observed the situation carefully. The leader narrowed their eyes, a flicker of doubt passing through them. They turned to the others, murmuring among themselves in their native language. Tyla stepped closer to Jordan, her hand brushing against their arm. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They have their own code, their own laws. Bringing you here," she trailed off, her eyes flickering to the others. "It's dangerous. I shouldn't have brought you." Jordan's throat tightened, but they forced themselves to remain calm. "Tyla, we're in this together. We can handle whatever comes." Her eyes softened for a brief moment, but then the tension returned, the weight of their situation bearing down on them both. The leader spoke again, their words clipped. "Human, you're not welcome here. There are risks, dangers that even you cannot comprehend. Your presence here could spark a conflict we have worked to avoid for centuries." Jordan's mind raced, trying to make sense of the threat in front of them. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about Tyla, too. This was her world, her people, and she had risked everything to bring them into it. They had to prove they weren't just some outsider to be cast aside. "We're not a threat," Jordan said, their voice steady despite the rising panic. "We don't want to cause any harm. I'm here because she trusts me. I trust her too." Tyla's hand tightened around their arm, and the leader's gaze flicked toward her. The silence stretched again, a moment of uncertainty hanging in the air. The others shifted uneasily, their eyes never leaving Jordan. After what felt like an eternity, the leader finally spoke again, their voice low. "You may stay for now, but know this. If you endanger us, if you bring chaos into our midst, there will be consequences." Tyla's expression flickered with a mix of relief and wariness. She nodded slowly, though it was clear that the conversation wasn't over. The leader turned and made a gesture, signaling to the others that it was time to leave. Jordan exhaled, letting the tension slowly ebb from their shoulders. "What was that all about?" they asked quietly, turning to Tyla as the figures dispersed into the shadows. Tyla took a long, steadying breath before answering. "I don't know if they'll ever fully accept you, but you've earned a place for now. They believe that humans are unpredictable, dangerous." Her gaze flicked to Max, who had returned to their side, sensing the moment was over. "But you showed them who you are. You and Max." Jordan let that settle in, their heart beating just a little easier. They hadn't expected to be welcomed with open arms, but the words from the leader had given them a glimmer of hope. They had a chance here, and so did Max. "I guess we'll prove them wrong," Jordan said with a smile, ruffling Max's fur. The dog responded with a soft bark, as if agreeing. Tyla's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For the first time since they'd arrived, she seemed to let her guard down just a little. As the group moved toward the center of the settlement, Tyla remained at Jordan's side, her hand brushing theirs. There was still much to navigate in this strange world, but for now, they had found a fragile understanding. Jordan glanced up at the alien sky, feeling a sense of cautious optimism bloom within them. They weren't just strangers here anymore. Together, they could face whatever came next.